Hello students, welcome to your online class of political science. This is the third class and we were discussing on Cold War era. Today we will start our class with the discussion on challenge to bipolarity. We have already seen how the Cold War tended to divide the world into two rival poles. One, the US, and second, the USSR. A third pole emerged and it was NAM, N-A-M, Non-Aligned Movement. The roots of NAM went back to friendship between three leaders: Yugoslavia's Josip Broz Tito, India's Jawaharlal Nehru, and Egypt's leader Gamal Abdel Nasser, who held a meeting in 1956. Indonesia's Sukarno and Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah strongly supported them. These five leaders came to be known as the five founders of NAM. The first non-aligned summit was held in Belgrade in 1961. Its aims were: number one, cooperation among these five countries; number two, growing Cold War tensions and its widening arenas; and number three, the dramatic entry of many newly decolonized African countries into the international arena. By 1960, there were 16 new African members in the UN. Over the years, the membership of NAM has expanded. The policy of staying away from alliances should not be considered isolationism or neutrality. Non-alignment is not isolationism, since isolationism means remaining aloof from world affairs. Now, new international economic order. Next point. New international economic order. The non-aligned countries were more than merely mediators during the Cold War. The challenge for most of the non-aligned countries, a majority of them were categorized as the least developed countries, LDC, was to be more developed economically and to lift their people out of the poverty. Economic development was also vital for the independence of the new countries. Without sustained development, a country could not be truly free, according to NAM. It would remain dependent on the richer countries, including the colonial powers from which political freedom had been achieved. The idea of New International Economic Order, NIEO, New International Economic Order, originated with this realization. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, brought out a report in 1972 entitled Towards a New Trade Policy for Development. The report proposed a reform of the global trading system, such as number 1, give the LDCs control over their natural resources exploited by the developed Western countries. Number 2, obtain access to Western markets so that the LDCs could sell their products and therefore make trade more beneficial for the poorer countries. Number 3, reduce the cost of technology from the Western countries. And number 4, provide the LDCs with a greater role in international economic institutions. Gradually, the nature of non-alignment changed to give greater importance to economic issues. By the mid-1970s, they had become the most important issues. As a result, NAM became an economic pressure group. By the late 1980s, however, the NIEO initiative had faded, mainly because of the stiff opposition from the developed countries who acted as a united group, while the non-aligned countries struggled to maintain their unity in the face of this opposition. Now, we will know what was India's position in Cold War. As a leader of NAM, India's response to the ongoing Cold War was twofold. At one level, it took particular care in staying away from the two alliances, and second, it raised its voice against the newly decolonized countries becoming part of these alliances. Two roles. India's policy was neither negative nor passive. As Nehru reminded the world, non-alignment was not a policy of fleeing away. On the contrary, India tried to reduce the differences between the alliance and thereby prevent differences from escalating into a full-scale war. India repeatedly tried to activate those regional and international organizations which were not a part of alliances led by the US and USSR. The non-aligned posture also served India's interests very directly, in at least two ways. Number 1, non-alignment allowed India to take international decisions and stances that served its interests rather than the interests of the superpowers and their allies. Second one, India was often able to balance one superpower against the other. If India felt ignored or unduly pressurized by one superpower, it could tilt towards the other. Neither alliance system could take India for granted. India's policy of non-alignment was criticized on a number of counts. First, India's non-alignment was said to be unprincipled. In the name of pursuing its national interest, India, it was said, often refused to take firm stand on crucial international issues. Second, it is suggested that India was inconsistent and took contradictory postures. Having criticized others for joining alliances, India signed the Treaty of Friendship in August 1971 with the USSR for 20 years. At the time of Indo-Pak War in 1971, it was the crucial or critical time for India, and so they signed Treaty of Friendship with USSR. This was India's position, and here the Cold War chapter completed. Thank you, students. We will meet again in the next class.